hardly the sort of thing a tugboat captain was trained for. He had been told by Frick that he would be transporting a number of watchmen from Bellevue to the plant grounds. But he was a dedicated man, and no coward either. His intent was to reach the company docks looming in the darkness just ahead, land the barges that he towed, and make haste away back to the blessed calm of the normal tugboating life. The frenzied crowd was only momentarily frustrated by the battlements of Fort Frick, however. When they saw the little bill make its turn toward the company docks, another mighty cry rose up, and men began to batter down the undefended walls. In short order, the fence was flattened, and hordes of workers stampeded through the breach, crying wildly as they went. "We'll send them home on stretchers," came the cry, according to the Herald report. "Hell will be full of new pictures in the morning." Others streamed into the plant along the unguarded railway tracks that scant days before had carried mundane carloads of ore and coke in, armor plate and rails and steel beams out. According to press accounts, one of the leaders of the mob, no less compelling for having appointed himself to the fore, was a middle-aged Britisher named Billy Foy, whose former command had been as chief of the corps of the Homestead Salvation Army. As the Herald put it, all the fervor of his wild religious training, spent hitherto in emptiness in denouncing the intangible devil and the invisible powers of evil, seemed to find a long-looked-for object upon which to wreak its will. The man had been longing for a chance for years to grapple with the powers of darkness in bodily form. Now it was coming up the river to rob him and his mates of their very homes and beds. While Foy led the charge through the shattered fences at the waterline of company property, another, even more colorful character stood out in the melee. This was Mrs. Finch, the apparent leader of the women who had joined the pack, that same white-haired grandmother who had guarded the alleyways of Homestead from the first days of the gathering storm. "The dirty black sheep!" she cried, brandishing her famous cudgel above her head. "Let me get at them!" Mrs. Finch's fervor had drawn a contingent of followers, some carrying babies, others clutching clubs, as she led the way toward the mill. High and shrill and strong for her years, as the voice of the lustiest fisherwoman who marched on Versailles, as the Herald reporter put it. A foolish mob going to war against hopeless odds of arms and discipline, the cries seemed then terrible as the charging cry of the black fanatics of the Sudanese desert. By the time the mob caught up, the captain of the Little Bill had managed to complete his bounden duty. The Monongahela and the Iron Mountain had been docked, and though no men had yet ventured onto shore, gangplanks had been readied for that purpose. As the crowd surged toward the tethered barges, an odd quiet descended over what had been bedlam. So much hatred had been brewed over the past weeks, so much invective hurled. Now the masses stood in a state of astonished anticipation, as though awaiting the emergence of creatures from a newly landed spaceship. Hatred palpitated there, no doubt, but also there was awe and fear. One man wearing the slouch hat of a Pinkerton appeared on the deck of the Monongahela, and a murmur swept through the crowd. A woman bent to pick up a stone, then hurled it at the barge. "Don't you land!" another called. "You must not land!" A man's voice followed. Go back, or we'll not answer for your lives." Another voice cried, "Don't come on land, or we'll brain you." The situation threatened to boil over once again when Hugh O'Donnell finally arrived, shouting mightily over the crowd for silence. Amazingly enough, he was obeyed. O'Donnell, portrayed in a widely published New York World sketch as a tall, angular man with a full, dark mustache and striking good looks, turned from the crowd and called out across the ominously quiet waters to the barges. "On behalf of 5,000 men, I beg of you to leave here at once. I don't know who you are, nor from whence you came, but I do know that you have no business here." There was no immediate response, of course, and O'Donnell pressed on. "We, the workers in these mills, are peaceably inclined. We have not damaged any property, and we do not intend to. If you will send a committee with us, we will take them through the works, and promise them a safe return to their boats. But in the name of God and humanity, don't attempt to land. Don't attempt to enter these works by force." Perhaps the last sounded like a challenge, or perhaps he had simply been biding his time. But at that, Captain Hinde, leader of the Pinkerton force, stepped finally onto the decks of the Iron Mountain to deliver his response unequivocally and imperturbably. "We were sent here to take possession of this property and to guard it for this company. We don't wish to shed blood. But if you men don't withdraw, we will mow every one of you down and enter in spite of you. You had better disperse, for land we will." O'Donnell surveyed the scene around him. In addition to the armed thousands who'd occupied the steep banks of the river where the barges were tied off, hundreds more looked down upon the scene from the vantage of the Pemmickey, Pennsylvania, McKeesport, and Youghiogheny railroad bridge just upstream. On the opposite side of the Monongahela, more sympathizers had gathered. O'Donnell had spent weeks and months in the attempt to engineer a peaceful resolution to a dispute that, in his mind, cried out for a meeting of reasonable minds. How had it come to this? What could he say now that had not already been said? What could he do but accept the inevitable? Finally, he took a breath and shouted back to Hinde. "I have no more to say," he called. "What you do here is at the risk of many lives. Before you enter those mills, you will trample over the dead bodies of 3,000 honest working men." With that, O'Donnell turned away. Chapter 15. Over the Edge. Had this been a modern-day standoff, with Frick in close touch with his emissaries by cell phone and Carnegie observing the scene via CNN satellite feed, there might have been some last-minute intercession, some barked command to send history down a different path. But for the slumbering Frick, the matter was out of his hands. His terms had been dictated, and events would proceed however they would. As for Carnegie, he had given Frick free rein. If he glimpsed any dire omens in the mists above a secluded lake in Scotland's wilderness that early July morning, there was little he could do about it. As it was, the exchange between Hinde and O'Donnell was followed by a period of motionless silence on the banks of the Monongahela, broken finally when Hinde ordered a group of his men to lower the Iron Mountain's gangplank to the shore. The moment the plank hit ground, William Foy, the former Salvation Army commander, strode to its foot, followed by a group of striking workers. Hinde, with a riot stick in hand, stepped onto the gangplank. "Now, men," he warned, "we are coming ashore to guard these works, and we want to come without bloodshed. There are 300 men behind me, and you cannot stop us." "Come on, and you'll come over my dead carcass," Foy shouted back. It was enough for Hinde, who stepped forward suddenly, slashing his stick at Foy's temple. Foy managed to duck in time, but Hinde's momentum sent him stumbling down the gangplank, his men surging after. Hinde's foot clipped the flat end of an oar left untended on the dock, sending its knotted handle flying upward. The knurled end of the oar cracked against the cheek of one of Foy's companions, who went down with a cry of pain. Another of Foy's men jumped forward and drove a club of his own into Hinde, sending him onto his back. Accounts differ as to what exactly happened next. Historians, trial transcripts, newspaper articles, and eyewitness accounts debate who fired first according to their predispositions. The only certainty is that 2 shots were fired in quick succession.